Welcome to Media Management. This class is important for a number of reasons. First of all, it's going to help you understand the structure of media organizations. It's going to help you in your job hunt for the right company to work for, and it's going to prepare you for working with and managing people. Most of you will be managing people within the first 5 years of your employment. We look at two aspects of running organizations. First of all, management itself and media economics. So management is a distinct process consisting of planning, organizing, commanding, coordinating, and controlling media operations. So those are kinds of things that you do when you're planning your day-to-day operation, when you're working with people in the company, and then you have to take into consideration the media economics, the economic environment. What's happening out there that's affecting what you're doing inside? Lots of questions to ask yourselves and the people around you, your team. Who are the major players? In other words, who's your competition? What is the market structure? We'll learn about that. Is it a concentrated market? Barriers to entry. These are terms that are new, but they relate real well to the media industries. Media economics, on the other hand, taking a look at that definition again, is concerned with resources. In other words, what do you need to produce your product? You need good people, you need good equipment, you need airtime, you need newspaper, you need web. Those are the resources. The production is the actual creation of that product, a TV show. The consumption, these are all media economic terms. In terms of media economics, we look at how people use mass media. We can also look at economics from a macroeconomics perspective, which examines the whole system at a national or a global level, such as legal implications. If new laws are passed, what's a law that was most recently passed? And those are always changing, and they change the way managers do business. Microeconomics examines the activities of the individual markets, the firms themselves, and the consumers. So there's a difference. We operate our media industries in different parts of the world, so there are different types of economies that they work under. A command economy, something would be where government makes all the decision. A market economy, on the other hand, is where there's no government regulation at all. That's a very rare instance. A mixed economy is where there's some governmental regulations, but media makes most of its decisions, and that's the kind of command economy that we work under. It goes hand in hand with the different theories of the press that you've learned in other courses. For example, a communist theory of the press is when the government controls the media. An authoritarian theory of the press is where media is privately owned, but it's heavily censored. And a libertarian theory of the press, which goes along with social responsibility, is a proponent of free speech and free press, and that's what we have in this country. Here's a look at some of the freest and least free press countries. U.S. is up there, Canada, Belgium, Denmark, Germany, and as you would imagine, the least free countries would be Iraq, Cuba, North Korea, China, Burma. But these are countries that are very much in the news today, and countries that we as media managers are expanding into, especially in China. But we do emphasize the importance of press freedom in our system, and it's very important for managers in this country to uphold freedom of speech. A free and independent press can help reduce poverty, spur economic growth in nations around the globe by exposing government corruption and giving their people a voice. Another term that's interesting and that applies only to media industries, and that's the idea that we have a dual product market. In other words, we're not just selling a product to one audience. We really have to sell our product to two. we have to make sure that the customer uses our product, so circulation to an audience. You also have to make sure that advertisers are buying ad time, and that's why we call it a dual product market. A couple of other terms as we relate them to the media relate to supply and demand. Some products are elastic and some products are inelastic. So if a product is elastic, we're indicating, or that indicates that as the price for a particular newspaper or service decreases, the supply is going to increase, and vice versa. If the price increases, the supply or demand by consumers may decrease. Inelastic is when you change those prices and it results in no significant change in the quantity demanded. So there are a number of things that determine what market structure you're operating in. So where's your TV station? Where's your newspaper? The market structure of that organization depends on how many other media organizations are competing with them. It depends on how the competitors make their products different or differentiate their product. It depends on how difficult it is for others to enter the market. And it depends on the prices. For example, prices in Chicago for advertising are going to be more expensive than prices in Topeka. Vertical integration is a term that's also related to media economics, and that is when you have a large company that owns all different aspects of production. So they own the companies that produce the product, the companies that distribute the product, and the companies that exhibit the product. Seller concentration is another important term in terms of media economics. Concentration is the number of competitors in the market. Sellers in concentrated markets have more market power because they own it all. Buyer concentration is another idea. Expresses the number of advertisers. Advertiser is powerful when this is high. So if buyer concentration is high, then the advertiser has a lot of power to say what they will or won't buy. Again, these terms, we will look at them. You're going to study them in terms of how the company that you're interested in competes. How do they make their product unique? If it's too similar, then you're not going to be able to draw in the customers. And anything that makes it difficult for a new competitor is going to be what we call a barrier to entry. So if it's very expensive, like the cost of a building, utilities, to hire a staff, those are high fixed costs. Whereas starting a website, you may have low fixed costs, so it's easier, and there are fewer barriers to entry. And there are lots of other barriers to entry, such as regulation or existing market power. Again, that term vertical integration, you've seen it before. Time Warner is a very vertically integrated company, and why would that be? It's because they own their studios, they own their distribution companies like New Line Cinema, and they own the companies that distribute the product like TBS Superstation. And when you get down to it, then there are 4 types of market structures. There's monopoly, it's when there's only one competitor. Oligopoly, when there are 3 competitors. Monopolistic competition, when there are many competitors, but the product is still different. And when there's perfect competition, when there are many competitors, but when the product is exactly the same. So I want you to think about those 4 different types of market structures, and then when we're through with this, give me examples of each of those companies that would fall into each one of those types of market structures. So again, when you start to study your company, you're going to be interested in what kind of market structure does it exist, who's their competitors, what's the nature of the product, is it difficult for others to enter. You're going to look at organizational goals. What are the short-term goals of your company? Are they achieving their goals? Should they add or drop goals? You're going to look at the nature of the demand. Do people want the product anymore? Do newspapers, are they appealing to young people? If not, why not? What are we going to do about it? The economic environment, that's certainly having a big effect on unemployment, the ability to get a job in the media firms, job satisfaction in these companies. You're going to look at the internal environment. How do they communicate internally? What types of written materials, such as a mission statement? That's always interesting to take a look at. And you're going to want to take a look at how they value training, personal interactions, what kind of gatherings that they have, their commitment, keeping in touch with employees, and different ideas in terms of how they involve employees. That will be very interesting to talk about. And what's being done that's innovative? Any company that you work for, you hope that you're going to be able to have fun, because so much of your time is spent at work. And it's okay to use the word have fun, create social events. The 4 A's of appreciation that companies need to express: they need to acknowledge their employees, they need to appreciate their efforts, and we all as managers and teachers and students, we need to do these things as well. Affirm choices made during conversations, and assure people that you will help them reach their goals. And finally, in class, in work, and in life, it's important to have a good attitude. And so a bad boss can be taught to be a better boss, but a bad person, someone who has a character defect that makes it impossible to be empathetic or self-aware, or someone who is just always difficult to get along with, is someone who you probably should never be in management. Nevertheless, those people you do find. So as we go into work environments, we want to make sure we do an attitude check and make sure that we're upbeat and positive, because if you are, then you're going to be considered to be a good employee and eventually a good manager. Thank you.